50 years ago, two social psychologists ran an experiment. They gathered a group of strangers and they partitioned them into smaller numbers, a group of 2 strangers, a group of 5, a group of 10, and so on. And while they asked them to perform some task, they were secretly plotting. And a few minutes into the interaction, they staged a fake medical event. One of the people in each group pretended to suffer a seizure. What the two academics were doing is they were trying to get some information about how groups respond to emergencies. And what they learned was actually really quite interesting. In the smallest groups, the groups with just 2 people, the person faking injury and the person being studied, in the smallest groups, those folks always jumped into action. They called for help in response to the medical emergency. They themselves tried to lend assistance. In the larger groups, what they found is that there was less likely to be a response. Indeed, the larger the group, the less likely that anyone would do anything in response to the moment. Now, this phenomenon has come to be called the bystander's effect, and while you might never have read about these studies, the implication of the bystander's effect is something we talk about all the time. You probably had someone advise you that if you're ever in an emergency, a car accident or a medical emergency in a public place, that if you're ever in an emergency and a crowd begins to gather, you shouldn't take great comfort in just that, but instead you should scan the crowd and identify someone with something distinctive and call on them in isolation. You in the red shirt, help me. You with the big black bag, I need your help. You in business casual, I need help. And I've been thinking a lot about that lesson and these studies over the last couple months, because I feel in a way like I'm living through this same experience as these experiments were 50 years ago. It'll come as no surprise to anyone in this room that the institutions of higher learning in this country are very much suffering a public emergency. Indeed, it's been brewing for a few years already. By my lights, it really started to feel that way when COVID changed everything at the university. We had our students and we sent them home and we had to send them home. But in so doing, we accidentally endorsed this idea that they could recreate the experience over a computer, far away, in isolation, maybe even watching us by video. Right as we were trying to come back from COVID and rebuild the personal connections we lost, we went into this period of a year now, too, of protests and angst on campus, protests about the place of the university and the college in the world, protests and complaints and concerns about the role of free speech on our campuses, protests and concerns and worries about folks who understandably were feeling threatened in this environment. We then lurched into the last few months, and the federal government is now piling onto these same institutions. It started with a little technical thing, that federal grants would no longer treat overhead the same way they used to. There would be a cap on how much of a federal grant could be used to subsidize the university or college writ large. Then came the more obvious public emergencies, as the federal government started freezing unbelievable amounts of research funding. Fast forwarding through to even today, when so many factors are telling our students from other countries that they're not welcome here. And let's be clear, that's a huge challenge for universities and colleges, both because our foreign students help make the place go financially, and because our foreign students bring intellectual and cultural diversity that we need. And as I was thinking of all these things and reflecting on the bystander's effect, I realized that what I wanted to do in my couple minutes this year is to take the lesson of the bystander effect and call on you. And no, I'm not going to call on you to ask you for money. Quite the opposite. I know so many of you in this room, and I know you already are amazingly generous to UCLA or to the other institutions with which you have a fond relationship. I'm not going to ask for money. What I'm going to ask you to do instead is to speak up. Over these next couple years, you are going to be in countless rooms where people are going to angrily tell you about why they're disappointed in us, in the universities and the colleges in this country. They're going to tell you that DEI goes too far or not far enough. They're going to tell you that universities are filled with economic bloat and waste and all these things. And what I want to ask you to do, what I want to call on you to do, is I want you to tell them that they might be right, that these are really hard issues and there are things to be upset about across the whole run, from DEI to anti-Semitism to free speech, all of it. But even as we know and acknowledge all of that, we still believe in the mission. We still say out loud in every single one of those conversations that we know that higher education is one of the most powerful gifts we give to the next generation. We know that higher education, these colleges and universities, is one of the promises that we made to all the folks who grew up less fortunate than us. We know that the research and work done on colleges and universities, not all of them, not every department, but overwhelmingly, this touches the issues we all care about. This is how we move medicine forward. This is how we increase the efficiency of crop production. This is how we get new technologies that we all cherish. We know that active, lively, well-funded, well-attended colleges and universities are an incredibly important melting pot. A place where people go and talk to folks who are not like the people they grew up with. And we don't have a lot of those left in this country. We need those places for people to experience those interactions. Now, some of these conversations are hard. You're dealing with folks who are understandably, maybe even rightly upset. And so I want to point out to you that there's a silver lining that no one really talks about in this bystander's effect. Again, the standard story is the one you've surely heard, where we tell the story about groups not acting. You're in trouble, a crowd gets around you, you shouldn't lean on the crowd, you need to isolate one person. We tell the story about the failure of the group, and we give the lesson from the perspective of the party in need, and we give them the advice to isolate someone and ask for help. But buried in the same literature, buried in the same experiments, is another really important lesson. And that lesson is a lesson for the person who speaks or acts. And the lesson for them is that there's a community of people standing around who largely agree with you. Think back to the silly original example that I gave you in this research. They had a crowd of people and someone pretended to have an epileptic seizure. And although no one acted, you can be sure that everybody in that room was sympathetic. They wanted to help. They were scared. They were unsure. But there wasn't some big disagreement in the group, just as when we see a car accident, and again, a crowd gathers and no one seems to be doing anything. It's not like they're sitting there unsure of whether the car accident is bad or whether we should be helping people who need our help. The hidden message inside the bystander effect is not only that when you're in need, you need to isolate a particular person for help, but also that there is truly a community who will largely share the view of and cheer for those of us who speak and those of us who act. Now, again, I know these conversations are hard. This conversation is hard, and there are many other important conversations we need to have in 2025, and those are also going to be hard too. And so I ask you to merely take away from this a reminder that you're not alone, even when you're the only one acting or speaking up. In those instances, I'd love for you to remind yourself that what you're really seeing is not a community that disagrees with you. I don't think that's descriptively right. What you're really seeing is that at that moment, it just so happens that you're the person in the red shirt. You're the person with the distinctive large black bag. You're the person rocking the business casual. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me.